как неоднократно делали в прошлостью, игнорируя наши озабоченности, протесты и
The announcement that Russia just made that it's recognizing the independence of the two breakaway regions in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine is a major, humongous escalation in the whole war situation. You know why it's a major escalation? I believe that I don't want to go through explaining all those things I've already explained in the previous video about Donbas. I apologize that I did not post that video early enough, but I think you should go see that video because I broke everything down. Now, these two breakaway regions, one is called Donetsk and the other one is called Luhansk or Lugansk. They are all located in a place called Donbas in the eastern part of Ukraine. They all broke away in 2014 when Viktor Yanukovych, a very pro-Russian president, was in Ukraine, but then he was kicked out of power when they had that massive protest which Russia believes that the Western powers actually sponsored and orchestrated. So Russia is feeling very angry that the West had ousted a person that was representing the interest of Russia in Ukraine, which was a very good thing. But of course, when that happened, the Russia-speaking part of Ukraine, which is in the place where you now have Donetsk and Luhansk, they decided they were no longer going to be a part of Ukraine because after all, they are 100% Russian. If you go to the eastern part of Ukraine, there are too many different people who speak fluent Russian, who are by every standard Russians. And so these groups decided we're not going to be a part of this anymore. And so from the moment they declared the republic, the Ukrainian army came after them and wanted to make sure that they take back those regions. Unfortunately, because of the backing they were getting from Russia, the Ukrainian army could not do that. They couldn't take back those regions. They actually had that republic, they declared it, and they started functioning like an independent autonomous republic. They had their flag, they had everything to themselves. They had their own militia and all of that. Of course, separatist held area is what people call that area. And then while this war kept going on between these separatist groups that declared independence from Ukraine and the Ukrainian forces, while that was going on, something happened in 2015. In 2015, the Western world came together and said, look, we can't continue to allow this happen. Let us go and sue for peace. And so they eventually ended up in a place they called Minsk. And that's where they signed the Minsk agreement. Now, I'm going to read you what the Minsk agreement said, so you will see why Russia did what they did tonight. The 13-point agenda of the Minsk agreement is immediate comprehensive ceasefire, number one. Number two, withdrawal of heavy weapons by both sides. So both sides must withdraw heavy weapons and not use them anymore, right? And people say that both sides have never, ever lived up to that agreement. Then number three, OSCE. OSCE is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Now, OSCE monitoring. Dialogue on interim self-government of Donetsk and Luhansk in accordance with Ukrainian law and acknowledgement of special status by parliament. Pardon, amnesty for fighters. Exchange of hostages, prisoners, humanitarian assistance, resumption of socio-economic ties, including pensions, Ukraine to restore control of state border, withdrawal of foreign armed formations, military equipment, mercenaries. And these are some of the reasons why Russia believes that Ukraine is not abiding by that Minsk agreement, because Ukraine is said to be hosting a lot of foreign military armed formations and mercenaries, right? Now, the next one is constitutional reform in Ukraine, including decentralization with specific mention of Donetsk and Luhansk. Elections in Donetsk and Luhansk. Intensify trilateral contact groups work, including representatives of Russia, Ukraine, and OSCE. So, going by these 13-point Minsk agreement, Russia believes that Ukraine is not abiding by any one of the items contained in the Minsk agreement. And Ukraine also believes that Russia has just violated everything that the Minsk agreement is all about by recognizing officially the independence of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. Remember, the guys there were called separatists. The regions were known as separatist-held regions because Ukraine has not officially ceded the land to them. The Ukraine believes that this is a Ukrainian territory that is held by Russian separatists. That's why no one had recognized them officially, not even Russia itself. And it was because of the Minsk agreement that Russia withheld recognizing them officially. But as of today, if you watch the previous video that I'm talking about, you will see how that NATO and its allies have already heavily militarized the eastern flank of Europe, almost surrounding Vladimir Putin's country with a lot of military weapons and equipment and stuff like that. So Russia believes, well, as you guys are surrounding me and planting your weapons in some neighboring countries to myself, and you are also pouring weapons into Ukraine and pouring your mercenaries into Ukraine, all these are violations of the Minsk agreement. So how do you expect me to begin to abide by the Minsk agreement? I will not do that anymore. If I have to die, I die. And that's what Russia just did. You say, okay, because they have violated everything that is contained in the Minsk agreement, I'm going to go ahead and recognize them. Remember, Donetsk is the first place where the first shot was fired. That's where the first bomb dropped. And then it blew up a military van that belongs to the Donetsk People's Militia, right? Now, when that van blew up, it wasn't the only one that was affected. The bombing started. That was when we knew the first shot was fired. There was a kindergarten that was affected as well, and some residential areas that were affected, which, according to Russian mouthpieces, which was what triggered the evacuation of the residents of Donetsk. They began to evacuate them into Rostov, east side of Russia. And as at the time that I was making that video, they were claiming that about 700,000 or more people had already been evacuated into Russia. And so what Russia's calculation is that, well, if we have to have all these refugees coming from the breakaway regions and we have to pay them and take care of them and all of that, why don't we just recognize them so that they will become technically Russians? And then the Russian military will move quickly into those regions and take position. And so when any bombing happens into that place, rather than the weak, ill-equipped militia of those republics responding to a heavier military from Ukraine, it will now be Russia responding to whatever fire that comes into those regions. So you can see what is going on. So according to the Western world, or in the eyes of the West and NATO and all their allies, what is happening right now is that what they've been drumming in the media all along is about to happen right now in a matter of maybe a day or two or just a few hours. Only God knows how soon that will happen. Russia, basically, there's no two ways about that, is going to soon move into those regions with their military. And immediately that happens, because globally, those regions are not recognized by any other person apart from Russia. What will happen is that the world will now assume or take it that Russia has finally now invaded Ukraine. So that invasion you've been hearing all along, it's finally about to happen. And when that happens now, all those javelins, all those weapons that have been pouring into Ukraine, or whatever mercenaries Ukraine has been keeping, or whatever soldiers they've been training, all of them are now going to be activated to fight Russia, because Russia is now occupying a land that belongs to Ukraine, which is not recognized by any of the Ukrainian partners or NATO and all their allies. So the invasion has taken place. And Russia itself also is going to be ready to respond, because Russia is going to say, why won't I do this when you guys have surrounded me? You've broken every single law. You already broke the law, the gentleman's agreement we had in the 90s regarding NATO not expanding eastward. You broke that. The Minsk agreement, you broke that. Even the Ukrainian president started threatening that he was going to abandon the Budapest agreement that bind or forbids Ukraine from developing nuclear weapons. Are you kidding me? So all these are things that Russia will look at and say, come on, nothing is binding anymore. Nothing is standing anymore. So, well, let's throw caution to the air. Let's do whatever we have to do. And this is what led to what we are all about to witness now. A major, massive escalation in this whole war situation. You know, if you watch my other video, you must have heard me say this repeatedly, that this is not really about Ukraine. This is not really about anybody wanting Ukraine to join NATO. This is about something that has been prepared a long time ago, planned a long time ago. It is all about the New World Order. Whenever our world goes through a world war, the order that prevailed before the war never continues after the war. It never happens. A new order must be introduced immediately after a global war, like the one that the world is about to be plunged into right now. It is definitely meant to consummate whatever the COVID-19 had brought, and it will then bring about the New World Order. And this is the New World Order that has no plans for God in it, no space for God in it. No space for your fiat money that is just a paper. The most lunatic and the criminal invention in human history. Paper money. You will not see it have any effect again under the new order. Everything is going to change. Life as you know it will change. This is not fear-mongering. This is a statement of fact. I'm telling you. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm not fear-mongering. How many times am I going to tell you this? I am not fear-mongering. I'm trying to prepare you. Be ready. Be ready. Be ready. Do not be caught unawares, especially African presidents who are so dependent on European and Western ideals and policies, both economically and otherwise. How are you going to cope when this happens? Nigeria, who are you going to sell your oil to when this happens? What about the monthly stipends you give to the states, which is basically how people survive in Nigeria? How are you going to cope? What alternative plans do you have? Nations in Africa, have you thought about this? You individuals, have you thought about this? What alternative plans do you have in case it boils down to us? In case it overflows to where we are? What plans do you have, guys? Let's still not give up on prayers, because who knows? Maybe God can still change his mind and say, you know what? I'm not letting it happen now. You got another chance. He can give us another chance. And that's my prayer. And I hope that you pray with me that God will intervene. And even if he doesn't, that he will protect each and every one of us and our loved ones wherever they may be. That's my prayer. And may it be so. God bless you.